Welcome back to Galactic Reviews. This episode is episode 5 of Moon Knight, season 1. That's on Disney Plus.
This episode had a lot. I thought for sure Jake
Yeah.
was going to come in. And started seeing people say that he did. The clip where he woke up and his nose is bleeding. He's got like tape across a bleeding bridge of his nose. And he's like, "You're not a doctor." People are like, "That's not Mark and that's not Steven. It's a different voice. It's different mannerisms."
Now that you say it, I mean, that's possible. I also expected them to be like in the scene where he's standing in the middle of the street on the other side of the car drinking. I'm like, okay, that could be Jake.
Taxi driver, yeah.
But it was like, nope.
I also thought for sure that the balancing of the hearts was going to have to be, oh, they're missing a heart. They need the third one.
Yeah, that's
No.
what I was thinking too.
We needed to kill Steven, which is, I mean, you got your wish. It's all Mark now. And we got the backstory.
I mean, yes and no.
It wasn't a traditional backstory.
We got to see him like become Moon Knight. However, we didn't get to see the whole place getting shot up, him trying to actually lead them away.
Mhm.
We got to see more so the aftermath of the battle instead of the actual fight.
I could see them saving that for trying to keep that dude being the villain of season 2.
They could, but I mean, it'd still be cool for them to at least tease it.
Yeah.
And that's another thing I'll bring up later, but I'll stick on this right now. And in episode, I think 2 and 3, they hint towards Mark being resurrected by Khonshu, whereas in this one, it just shows him being healed from his wounds and not necessarily resurrected.
Mhm.
So I don't know if it was two different writers and directors and that line just happened to slip by or whatever, but that's a continuity error nonetheless. That's just something I was like, wait a second, that doesn't make any sense. But
yeah, I don't remember the exact line or anything that was used, so I can't confirm nor deny. To me, he looked like on the verge of death.
Yeah, well, I'm not denying that, but I remember Khonshu saying to Mark, it's not easy bringing somebody back from the dead, and that takes a lot of power out of him. And I remember him saying that specifically, and I believe it's in episode 2 or 3, because I believe it's on the episode with Mr. Knight first showing up.
I thought the flow of this movie was cool. I liked finding out that they were on the boat and in the Egyptian underworld and they died. I'm still not sure what was the deal with going in and out of like the mental hospital.
To some extent, I get what they were going for, but they didn't do it in the best way, I guess, because that part was confusing where he was switching in between on the boat with Steven and then in the office room with Dr. Harrow. That was kind of confusing.
Yeah, I didn't get what was going on.
I get what they were doing, like as far as like building Mark's character, which I'm glad it happened in like the second to last episode. That was sarcasm, but I'll let it fly.
You let your own sarcasm fly?
What I was hoping for was for this to be sprinkled throughout the first couple episodes to give some background and absolutely nothing for Mark's character.
Mm-hmm.
That way we weren't dumped all this information in the last couple episodes. That way we would get more of a involvement with this character instead of just now getting involved with him and his life before.
I mean, that goes along with them using Steven as the main character up until this point. And I feel like they explained why they did, because it was from the viewpoint of Steven, and Steven's viewpoint was that he was the original. And then they
really didn't even say that until now, where he's like outright says, I thought I was the original.
Yeah.
And then he gets mad at Mark. And then he come to find out that Mark was actually protecting him as he had been protecting Layla. He's more so the protector, somewhat like Khonshu. However, for whatever reason, they decided to make Khonshu a prick in this show, which is one of the things that I don't quite like. I thought this was the best of the episodes so far. However, I think it's a little bit too late as they only got one episode to tie everything together.
This is true. They do have one episode to finish the season.
If they had 2 episodes, I think they could do it. But with just one, I don't know how they're going to do it unless they do like an hour and a half long episode.
It depends. It depends where they leave it. If they try to do like a final fight, fix the problem, and then aftermath of the problem, that'll be too much. But if they do just final fight and the problem is fixed and we don't see what comes next, that could be the until next time.
I mean, I was also like you, hoping to see Jake and that be like the fix for the balance or whatever,
mm-hmm.
as that would have made sense. And I don't know why they all of a sudden balanced when Steven died, but I think it was just them like progressing the plot along and not really thinking about the actions of the plot. And so they were just like, quick, okay, we got to hurry up and make this. That's what it seemed like to me.
I could see how
But
they would have the thought of, ooh, maybe having 3 personalities would be too much to juggle for a 6-episode show. I could
True.
understand that if that's their thought.
what I wish they would have
Especially
done
to
instead
introduce
is that
the final personality in pretty much the final episode.
well, I mean, they're gonna have to because he's appeared a couple times sporadically
I
in
mean,
the
if
show,
anything, they'll
either as a
probably-
background
They'll
afterthought.
probably just show him in like the final scenes of season 1.
Well, what I'm thinking they might do is they might actually show him with Mark as he's still in the afterlife and help him get back or whatever. Because I mean, Steven's no longer there as he died, let's say, in the sands of death or whatever, the
Yeah.
sand dunes of death. What I'm thinking they're gonna do is he's gonna go back to being Moon Knight with Khonshu on the precipice that he brings Steven back from the dead. That's what I think is going to happen. And he's going to stay Moon Knight. That is my thought as of now. I still think Layla will
Or
at
it
some
could be the
point
fact
be Moon
of
Knight as
since-
shown. But
Since technically Steven is just a personality, it doesn't matter. He'll just be brought back anyways because he's not the
True.
real.
I mean, I could see that being the reason as to why Mark
No,
goes
which
back to being Moon
I
Knight.
do understand.
I think this was one of the more darker backstories I've seen out of a Marvel hero.
Yeah, without
That
a
was-
doubt.
That was dark.
No,
Yeah.
his whole backstory is betrayal.
Well, it's mainly by his brother, if I remember correctly. Whereas in this one,
it's by different people.
True,
But usually
true.
it's who in whichever comic book lore, it's whoever he's closest to. I mean, then he decides he just doesn't trust anyone. Pretty
Yeah.
much kind of like a Batman in a
You
way.
took me, myself, and I a little too far.
if I remember the comic books correctly, in this one it shows him like creating these personalities, or at least Steven. I would think he
Mhm.
accidentally created Jake from just pure anger and shoving that to the side, much
I
like
would think it would
Harvey
probably
Dent
be
created
because-
Two-Face, but
Yeah,
the same way.
From what I'm understanding, how he created Jake was probably from just bloodlust of wanting.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. Just
To
pushing
hurt-
the anger
yeah.
to the side, kind of like Two-Face
I don't want
in
to
a
say I
sense.
don't want to say to hurt his mother, but to relieve the stress
Yeah, like
from her abuse.
Escape.
and whereas in the comics, it's actually a different way. He actually just gains this naturally. It just
I've
happens to him.
mhm.
And
Originally they were just alter egos.
Mhm.
yeah, originally they were, and then they came up with the idea, let's make it split personality.
Well, it's
I've seen
because-
one where in some iterations where Mark was first and the other personalities didn't appear until after he became Moon Knight and like joined with
Yes.
Khonshu, because like the moon has different phases, so he just kind of naturally
Mhm.
shattered to fit the like having different faces aspect of the moon god.
And then the others is he would create them after living those different lives for so long. His mind broke because he couldn't figure out which one was the real one.
And in other ones, like the one, I believe one of the ones I read on Wikipedia was he gained this naturally, and it showed him actually meeting a kid named Steven and him not realizing he was actually saying the words that Steven was saying. He also met a kid named Jake later, and that's when his parents got concerned about it. His brother got jealous of him always getting the attention. Unlike in this, his brother ends up actually becoming like a mercenary as well, and he's actually against Mark on the whole thing with the architect thing where the architect gets shot. He's actually there with Bushmaster going to shoot Mark. So it's very much a comic book esque story. Whereas this one, they took it, they twisted it a little bit and made it so that way his mom abused him, and that's how he got the different personalities, having part of himself having that perfect life as a kid. Whereas Mark was always the one that was there when she would abuse him. And that's where I'm thinking Jake is going to be the personality that's like crazy and very much just tempered due to him like having all this anger pushed to the side.
Mhm.
Or at least Mark having all this anger built up and pushed to the side, much like Harvey Dent was for like Two-Face. So that's where I'm seeing this going. But I'm just surprised still that they haven't brought out Jake. And I don't like that they decided to do this almost at the very end where it felt more like they were just like, quick. We got to give all this backstory. We got to have it make sense. We got to make people care real quick. Whereas I wish they would have just like sprinkled it here and there and then lined up the pieces that weren't quite completely filled in and then had it go the way it needs to go. That's why I'm saying it's great, but it's too late.
I would still enjoy seeing Duchamp in the final episode, and he's the one who releases Khonshu. That would make a lot of sense.
It would,
That would
It
be
honestly
fun
would.
too.
but he hasn't showed up and he's only been that one little cameo on the phone.
Yes, but
So-
still, I mean, it would be fun. It would be interesting. I think it would be a fun idea.
It would, but they'd have to explain it quick because it's the last episode. They only got so much time. We still haven't seen Amit yet.
I've seen a theory that Harrow is lying and that he was not the former avatar of Khonshu, but he's the current avatar of Anubis, just based on like the scales and the way he does that.
True.
Because
However,
Amit
it-
doesn't judge; she just eats
Yes.
based on the Egyptian mythology. So I've seen some theories about that.
I mean,
That's a
the thing
decent
is-
theory. However, they've already established that he was a former one just by that council.
Fair enough.
There's that. Otherwise, I could see that theory playing out. However, that
But-
council already explicitly says that he is a former one of Khonshu. Also, when he's by himself with him and Khonshu alone, he tells Khonshu that it is because of him that
That's
he is
right.
doing this.
True.
So if it wasn't for those two scenes, I could maybe
Yes, because no, the scales of judgment is what I can't remember the hippo used, but that's
Quiet,
what
yeah.
Anubis uses because Anubis is the one that guides your soul through the land of the dead. So
So what-
I was really confused when she was doing it.
So what you're telling me is I didn't pay enough attention to the Egyptian lore.
Well, I mean,
I'm pretty sure they're not super accurate with the Norse lore either. So
I mean, no, not really. I'm trying to think of like what scales does he use to judge someone?
the
It's a-
tattoo and then like his cane.
Yes, but it's a specific scale that he uses. It's not the scale of justice or the scale of maybe the scale of justice.
I do not. I
Because
am
the
not.
scale of judgment is what Anubis uses to judge one's heart against the feather.
Yeah.
To me, it's just too little, too late at this point. It's a good episode, probably the best episode I've seen, just because it gives Mark a backstory, shows why he is the way he's been, doesn't make him a complete, prick, makes you understand as to why he's been doing what he's been doing, putting Layla and Steven in the dark and stuff, more so than just she doesn't want her to be Khonshu, because I've already explained it earlier that it didn't quite make as much sense. He's just protecting both of them as he has been beforehand, putting him in that protector slot of brotherhood, if you want to consider Mark, Steven, and Jake all brothers.
And Zach's still looking at scales on eBay.
Actually, I'm just looking. What's the god that they were trying to bring back?
Amit,
There it is. I couldn't figure out how to spell it, so
AMIT.
it's with two M's.
I'm still wondering why they haven't brought in Jake, because they've hinted at him so many times. They hinted at him like in episode 3, hinted at him again in episode 4.
It could have been difficult to juggle 3 different personalities.
Wait, Amit is the one that
Eats the heart.
Osiris.
Little dog thing.
Yes, Osiris feeds the evil souls to. She's the one everyone's afraid of because she just is the patron of death and execution.
So Andrew, here's the question for you, I guess. Do you
Mm.
think they're gonna just not put Steven in the last episode until the very end and then have Jake and Mark be in there and introduce Jake a little bit, since they're not gonna have 3 personalities? Or do you think
I
that they're
think-
just gonna neglect Jake until the end?
I think if they introduce him, they would have had to do it after they've finished introducing Steven or Mark. And we didn't know any of Steven's history as well. But this episode gave us both Steven and Mark's history. So now we don't need to learn anything more on Steven and Mark.
Yeah.
So then they could focus on Jake.
Well, also that, and we knew most of Steven's characteristics just by the way he had been, where he went to work and stuff, and his whole day and stuff in the first episode. Whereas it's different with Mark. We had just gotten he was more of a gotta get the job done, go kind of guy, and we didn't really get much of his character. Whereas now we've gotten more of his character in the sense of through the backstory and how he's been acting with Steven, more so in this episode. especially since now he isn't trying to fight over the body and they're both technically in like the mind space, I guess, or the afterlife.
Yeah.
It's
I'm
different.
I'm interested to see what the finale is going to be like.
I kind of am as well because I'm trying to see how they're going to try to fit as much as they can to make all this make sense in 50 minutes because
I
they got
think
a lot.
I am betting on that it's going to be final battle. Whatever happens for the final battle to win will, whether it's Layla becoming the Moon Knight or them figuring it out and Jake swoops in and saves it, or Chu Champ comes in after releasing Khonshu. But I think it's going to end right after the final battle and like not have like a what next happen. Otherwise, I feel like it's just going to be a mess of a pacing.
Yeah, well, I'm thinking at some. What I'm thinking at one
Or
point
they
is
get out and it's solved.
that would be a cheap way out.
It would be a cheap way out, but it would be that's how you can like introduce a bigger bad, but that would be a cheap way out. And I
It
would
would
not
be a
prefer
very
that.
cheap way out, especially with this lead-in about Amit and everything for like the last
Exactly.
5
It would be a
episodes.
cheap way out.
I'm thinking at some point it'll be Mark will be overwhelmed by the henchmen of Amit and can't deal with it, and that's when Jake will take over and just go feral on everybody, essentially in the Moon Knight costume, because I don't think he's gonna care.
And then there'll be a mirror and Mark will just be standing there like, what's going on? Zach, are you still looking at scalesonly.com?
No, I was looking up other stuff.
You know,
Your
Watch is a
imagination
scale of time.
wild. What?
Yes.
No, I
So,
was still
yeah.
trying to figure out about Amit.
Oh, yeah, that's the bad guy.
Well, yes. Goddess Maya. Those are her scales, but they're used by everyone else to judge people's hearts.
Gotcha.
I'm still wondering why, like, besides maybe just to move the plot along, they would have the scales balance after Steven dies. Like, I'm trying to think of a logical reasoning as to why the scales balance right after Steven dies.
No idea.
Like, not even like it's calibrating, not even that, just like right after he dies.
I mean, if all they do is fight with each other and they have conflicting viewpoints on the world and life and how things should be solved, and then that conflict is resolved when one dies,
Yeah.
maybe.
But they already kind of had that when they were going through, especially after they had already gone through everything that they had done in the psych ward, and and when
Maybe.
they came out, they were already at that point where they were just in the same boat where they respected each other. They didn't quite understand everything about each other, but they respected each other.
Maybe it didn't have to do with him dying. It balanced when they like came to terms and started working as a team and working as one. And then Steven just happened to die, but like it's a little too coincidental.
Yeah, that's the thing. I would have thought the hippo would have came in as soon as it balanced and said stop.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm not she saying was rooting for him.
I'm not saying I get it. I'm just trying to offer.
I know. I'm not trying to throw you under the bus. I'm just offering the
No,
alternative.
I
I'm
agree.
like,
I agree.
this has been the best episode by far, at least in my opinion, for the whole thing. Like, quite honestly, I'm thinking you could take maybe the first, the ending of the fourth, and then the fifth, and that's probably all the plot you need. Like the first, the beginning of the second, the ending of the fourth, and then all the fifth, and that's basically the whole plot. Most of the other episodes, I think episode 3 is mostly filler.
I think I still really enjoyed 3 the most. Yeah.
It felt like more like they were spreading it out, and then they felt like they were just cramming it all in for it to be, I don't know, it feels, it's weird because it feels like parts of it are getting stretched out too much, parts of it are getting scrunched in too much. It's weird.
Understandable.
That's me. I think Layla has been too overused, if that's like not in this episode per se, but just in this
episode.
I just said not in this episode, Zach. So
Oh, okay. Never mind.
but I just mean like in this series, I guess. I thought honestly she was just gonna be a 1 episode in and done character, just help the plot move along, and it didn't happen. But
I mean, let's be honest, if they brought in Duchamp, they would have done the same thing. He would have been there for more than just 1 episode.
I know, but Duchamp would have been more of a understandable reason, considering that it would be one of his mercenary buddies who had actually helped him out as Moon Knight.
Well, with Layla, it's the fact that she's the father of the archaeologist he tried to protect, but ended up being one of the main reasons why he died. So it's mostly the fact of just having her figure everything out and then having Steven figure it all out and have Mark come to terms with it as being not really his fault.
I mean, I get that, but it's just the writing for her seems bad. They
Okay.
don't really explain a lot of the things that she's able to do. She just does them, and we just take it. Like there's no explanation. Well, at least with Steven, you knew he couldn't fight, and when he tried to fight, it was pathetic. Mark, we knew he could fight because he had been a mercenary. We had already been shown that, and so we weren't surprised when he was able to fight. Layla, we weren't told anything, and she was able to fight on a whim. And the only thing we knew about her was she was the archaeologist's daughter that he felt guilty about. So it's just, it didn't feel like she wasn't written well enough for it to make
Yeah, I
sense.
mean, I will say, especially with the fact of she wasn't really meant to fight. So she had fewer years of training doing whatever it was that she was doing.
She was an archaeologist's daughter, so I'm assuming that she would have known more about archaeology than she would about marksmanship, which I would assume is a safe bet. Now, if she picked that up from Mark, I would understand, but they didn't give us that leeway. And so, but they never told us anything about that. They never really explained anything about that. They just had her just be able to do whatever Mark could do, essentially, to some degree. I just saw Andrew's face like, no.
I mean, from my end, it looked like she was barely hanging on in the fights. Other than being a good shot, which I like the one hand-to-hand fight she actually had, she was like barely hanging on. I
Which
think
one was
with
that?
the mummy in the tomb.
Talking about the one where it's the bigger guy bodyguard.
Yeah.
Yeah, but she killed him way too quickly.
I thought that went on for a while.
Yeah, but then she just able to pull out the knives and stuff, and it goes into his chest, and that just happens way too quickly.
Yeah, she pulled out a weapon. Yeah.
Yeah, but he also had a weapon too.
Based
It
off
went-
of that fight, I don't think she should have been able to beat the mummy. I think she would have
No,
had
I
a
don't think-
higher chance of beating the mummy than Steven. I think Steven would have fared worse against it, but I find this man-eating mummy that has eaten literal soldiers and then falls to some archaeologist woman without any recognizable combat history was a little weird.
Also that, and she was caught off guard by him.
Exactly.
Like, granted, she knew about a mummy when she was crossing the ravine. However, at that where she was at that moment, she was not expecting him. It doesn't
She should have won that
explain it.
fight.
Yeah, it doesn't explain it well, which is what I'm saying. I get like there are some points where it's like you could see it going either way, but
Mhm.
some of these it's just like I wouldn't even expect Steven to be able to do it. Like granted, he was able only to do what he did on the boat with blunt force. Mark would have done it with way more precision, which shows that Steven doesn't have the training, but he has some of the skill that Mark does just because they both have the same body.
Which didn't carry over until this episode.
Well, it's because they
Well, that's
finally
because Mark,
realized it.
well, also that and Steven didn't really truly embrace that he might not be and actually isn't the main one. So
Yeah, he thought he was the original and Mark was some crazy dude that he created and can do cool stuff.
Do cool stuff.
I wish they would have explained that sooner with them having like an argument earlier. Well, no, I'm the original. And Mark just going like, what? Like completely like confused as to why he would think that. I would at least like to have had like that little small conversation in the bunker when they were going back and forth as to no, you have
Panama.
the bad guns.
Panama.
Panama.
Good episode. It's just too late.
And I understand that.
I'm glad we got some background though. That's been lacking within the last 4 episodes.
All right, thank you everyone for tagging along for episodes 1 through 5, and join us next week as we finish up the series with the finale of Moon Knight, however long that episode might be. Let's hope for the sake of the season that it is a longer one, or at least they do something really, really clever. We have Sonic coming up. We have Sahara, Matthew McConaughey coming up, and we should have some other cool movies and discussions coming up. So thank you for tagging along. We hit 100 subscribers on Audea. So yeah, check us out on all different platforms.